Hey kids, welcome back to another week of Kids Life. I'm so glad to be with you here this week. We've been going through this series all summer long called Jesus Says, and we've been talking about Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he told us and showed us exactly what it means if we want to follow him, what our lives should look like. We've learned things about what it means to be blessed, about how we shouldn't be angry or full of hate, about how we should be generous and full of prayer, and how we shouldn't judge others. All these sorts of things. There's a whole lot of things we've learned about what it means to follow Jesus. And here's the thing, they aren't always easy. But Jesus knows that. He knows it won't always be easy to make the right choices or to choose to love someone rather than to be angry at them because they did something really, really mean. And Jesus knows that we're just humans that make mistakes every single day. He knows that it's hard for us to live to the standard that he's called us to, but he doesn't lower the standard because of that, but instead he gives us something better. And as Jesus is winding down his Sermon on the Mount, he says this. He says, "Enter the narrow gate, because wide is the gate and broad is the path that leads to destruction, and many will take that path. But small is the gate and narrow is the path that leads to life, and only a few will find that." I'm on this wide path right here, right? It's a pretty nice path. It's not paved all the way, but it's gravel and it's nice, and if I want to walk, I can walk and not worry about really tripping over anything or running into any sort of bush. It's a nice wide path, and it's easy for me to walk on it. And what Jesus is talking about here is these things that he's called us to are not easy, and there are a lot of people in the world who will hear about Jesus and will decide, I don't want to do that. I don't want to follow Jesus because it's going to be hard. It's not going to be a walk in the park, and I can't just do whatever I want whenever I want to. It's not easy, and we're told that we want life to be easy. We want everything to go our way every single day and do whatever works for us. But that's not what Jesus has called us to. Have you ever heard someone say that when you follow God that everything in life is going to get easier? It kind of goes back to what we talked about in one of the first couple weeks of this series, that we think blessing means that God is going to give us stuff. So if we follow God, if we pray, if we read our Bibles, then he's going to bless us by giving us all the best toys and new video games and everything that we could ever want. But that's not the way God works, and thankfully that's not the way God works. That's not as good as what God actually is. So think about this. A lot of you guys are either already starting school or you're going to be starting in this next week or the week after that. And as you get back into the rhythm of school, you'll start to have tests or at least homework. And think about if you show up to class one day and you realize, oh no, I totally forgot to do my homework. I just totally spaced, didn't do it. And you're like, hey, friend, give me your paper so I can copy down the answer so I can turn something in, right? That is the easy thing. It's like, I know if I don't do this homework that I'm either going to get a bad grade or I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to fail school and never be able to get a job and have to live with my parents for the whole rest of my life. And maybe you don't really want to do that. So you're like, give me this paper and let me cheat off of it. And that feels like the easy thing, and it's like, well, this is what's going to be good for me right now. But that, as you guys know, is wrong. That's not what we want to do. And we could get caught and we could get in trouble, or we could get away with it, and then we never learned what we were supposed to learn from our homework. We want to take the easy, wide path, but doing the right thing is hardly ever easy, but it always, always, always is better. So instead of taking the wide path, Jesus said we should take the narrow path. Look at this path. It is rough and tough, and it's kind of trampled down dirt, but there are roots sticking out, there are sticks you can trip on, and if you're not paying enough attention, you could veer off and smack into that tree over there, right? It's a narrow path, and it's kind of harder to follow. And Jesus says that this is the path we should take. But why would Jesus want us to take this small, narrow, rickety, raggedy path? Wouldn't he want us to have the easy one? It can sound like a little bit of bad news that Jesus is calling us to take this narrow path and go through a narrow gate. But this is the path that he says leads to life. And I think it's good news for a couple reasons. First, it shows hope, because it's not that there's no way to find life and to find, what it means to follow God, but he gives the hope that there is a path and a right path for us to follow. And I think that's good news. The other reason it's good news is because of the wisdom that I think God shares with us. God knows everything. He knows what is best for us in our lives. And he knows that if we just always do what we want whenever we want, then it's gonna hurt us and it's gonna hurt other people that we care about and other people that we love. And he doesn't want that to happen. And the third reason I think this is good news, the news about the narrow path, is that Jesus did it himself first. If you guys think all the way back to the Old Testament, if you remember, the way people got to God in the Old Testament was through sacrifices, through festivals, through rituals, and following all these rules. And if you did everything right and you did the right sacrifices, then you could get to God and you could go to heaven and you could experience what it means to follow God. And honestly, for God, that was pretty easy for him, right? All of the work was on people's shoulders. It was on us to follow the rules that God set and to do the right sacrifices that God put in place. And yes, God was always calling out to and speaking to his people. He's the one who would initiate it, but it was on the people a lot to follow the rules, to do the festivals, to do the sacrifices. And then Jesus was born, right? He came to earth as a little baby, and he grew up and he lived this life without sin, and he always followed God, and he always was on the narrow path that was leading to life. And at the end of his life, he chose to do the thing that was farthest from what was easy, right? If Jesus wanted, he could have, as the people were coming to capture him and to take him to the cross, he could have knocked them all down and called down angels to protect him and done all of these things to look out for himself and to protect himself. But he didn't do that. He didn't choose what was easy, because he knew when he died and came back to life for us, he knew that that would be the better thing. That would take the weight off of our shoulders and all the work and the responsibility away from us and bring it back to him and to what he has done for us. Jesus took that narrow path that leads to life so that we can do it too. The wide path leads to destruction and to hurt and to sadness and to sorrow. Even though it feels easy now, it will always hurt us more in the end. But this narrow path that Jesus laid out for us, that he told us about in the Sermon on the Mount, following that, even though it can be hard and not always what we want to do every single day, following that leads to life, which is Jesus. Jesus is the life. He is the gate that we go through to get to the Father. He is the ultimate goal of our lives, right? So this week, guys, as you're maybe already started school or getting into school, I want you to take the narrow path, to go against kind of your natural instinct that says, I want to look out for myself and I want to do what feels best for me, but to follow God every single way. And all these things that we've learned over the course of the summer. If you get to school and you see someone who was really mean to you last year, to not, avoid them, but to become friends with them and to pray for them and to have a relationship with them. And this week, as you hear Jesus speaking, I want you to follow his voice. See where he's at work. Go to the places that he is at and follow the narrow path that leads to life. And while it's not always going to feel easy to follow Jesus, I promise you guys, it is always the better thing. So you can talk to your huddles about that now, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.